Buster Olney has covered the MLB for over 20 years, writing for the Baltimore Sun, San Diego Union Tribune, the New York Times, and since 2003, he's been a senior writer for ESPN. Buster, and thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, great to talk with you guys.
Thank you, Buster. And John Sokoloff here. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this really quick. Trevor Story has had this miraculous start, best start ever for a rookie, 7 home runs in his first 6 games. Do you think that this is a fluke, or will these numbers reflect on his future performances? Because we've seen guys in the past explode in their starts and then only have a few home runs later on and not really reflect on their future performances.
Yeah, and I got to say, today I spent some time actually talking to some Rockies people. Zach Wilson is their farm director, and I asked him that very question, in so many words, and essentially the same thing. Where, okay, is this something that has some lasting impact? And he told me a great story about how when Trevor was in A-ball, he had a tough year in Class A Modesto, and the next year, rather than advance, he's like the kid in grade school who was held back a grade. They sent him back to Modesto because they told him, look, you need to work on your approach, you need to work on your consistency in your some of the things that you do. And he totally bought in. He didn't complain. He didn't mope. He didn't gripe. He went and got the work done. And Zach was talking about how he really has just consistently got better and better and better. And, what really people knew him for in the minor leagues a lot was that he was a free swinger who would strike out a lot. He's actually gotten better about that. So, I mean, look, is he going to, hit 150 homers? No. He's not going to keep up the pace he's had. But Zach and some of the other Rockies people I spoke with absolutely believe he'll continue to be a good player for them.
One of the teams I wanted to touch on during this interview was the Red Sox. They had one of the better off seasons in the MLB, bringing in guys like David Price, Craig Kimbrell, that Wade Miley trade for Carson Smith. But there's still that glaring hole in that starting rotation. There's not a ton of reliability there. Do you think David Dombrowski is going to go out and try to bring in another starting pitcher to this rotation?
If they need it, he'll go get it. I mean, let's face it, everything that we've seen them do since the end of last season tells you that they are trying to turn this around after finishing last place the last 2 years. To go out and spend, a record amount of money for at least a couple of days on David Price, and then to, make the big trade for Craig Kimbrell, to make an aggressive trade for Carson Smith, and I think most notably this spring, to essentially tell Pablo Sandoval, okay, you're owed $76 million over the next 4 years, but we don't care about your contract. We're going to put you on the bench because we're trying to win, and I think that's the mode they're in. And I know that they're hopeful that Rick Porcello can pick up some threads from what he had at the end of last season and pitch well early this year. Clay Buchholz has certainly shown signs where he could be that guy, but if they need to get that guy, I think he will get that guy.
So you don't think that Eduardo Rodriguez returning to the rotation will be enough, or do you think this is a playoff contending team as they stand?
Well, I'm skeptical about his injury, and look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what his medical situation is, but when I hear a left-handed pitcher essentially dislocated his right knee, which is a knee that he lands on over and over and over and over again in his delivery, then I wonder if there's some larger issue going on. If you remember, at the time that Eduardo Rodriguez went down initially back in February, the Red Sox were saying, we don't think it's a big deal. Well, have you seen him on a mound recently?
No, we haven't. So let me ask you this. You touched on Pablo Sandoval. He was benched on that big contract last offseason. And you can tell there's a little frustration whether he's admitting it to the media or not. His agent came out and said they'd welcome a trade. Can you see Pablo Sandoval being moved? Is there enough interest for teams to take him off the Red Sox hands, so to speak?
Well, it would have to be a bad contract for a bad contract. That's like the only chance that they would have, or the Red Sox would have to eat like 95%. But I got to tell you, and I had this conversation with a baseball executive this week, even if the Red Sox, under the current circumstances, were to say, call the San Diego Padres and say, hey, I'll tell you what, guys, we'll trade you Pablo for James Shields. Why would the Padres want a player who, at the current his current state, doesn't look like he's anything close to a major league player? He's badly out of shape. I don't know what he weighs exactly, but I mean, you guys can look at him when you're busting through your belts and your swing, which is what happened in Toronto for him last week. That's a huge problem. And, scouts I talked to in spring training think he's basically unplayable at third base defensively. So what exactly would be the motive of a team like the Padres or any other team to bring him in? Because at the moment, he does not look like he could be a decent major league player.
And going off that, those are all good points about the current state of the Red Sox. But the AL East, the beginning of the year, was really completely just up in the air. Any of the four teams, I think, maybe even like besides the Rays, but you look at the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, Yankees, the Orioles, any of those teams, in my opinion, could come out of it. Who do you have coming out of the AL East?
Well, it's interesting. You say the Rays. When I tweeted out I think in late February, my first initial playoff picks, and I had the Rays in there because I love their starting pitching, and I think that's going to keep them relevant throughout the year and in the conversation. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win the division. I wound up changing my pick to the Blue Jays because I do think that all year the fact that they're going to have this consistent drumbeat of offense will in the end be difference-making. I think the Yankees have a lot more depth than what people realize. They've done a good job of adding some young players over the last couple of years between Didi Gregorius and Aaron Hicks and Starlin Castro and Nate Eovaldi. And along with their older players, along with the addition of Aroldis Chapman, they, to me, are a team that's going to make the playoffs. The Orioles could win if they get better performance out of their rotation, and we talked about the Red Sox issue, the fact that they do need a number 2, number 3 type guy in the rotation to step forward. But when I turned to my picks, it was Blue Jays to win the division. It was the Yankees to make it as a wild card team.
And that's a good point. You brought up the Blue Jays. That was my next topic of discussion here because they've been on a tear to start the season, and I know they haven't played great teams in the Rays and Twins to start it off, but 6-0 is a very good record to start off. That's exactly how they wanted to start off the year, and there was really no question in their bats. But it was the starting rotation. Their bullpen's been solid. It was the starting rotation, and that's what you touched on before. Can guys like Chris Tillman and Kevin Gausman and Jimenez and Gallardo, can they get it done? And in the beginning of the year, it looks like it has been, but coming down the stretch, I don't know if they can come in the dog days of baseball in July and August. I don't know if they can still be those guys, but do you think that the Orioles are the real deal? Because coming into the season, they were ranked 21st in the ESPN power ranking, and my colleague and I, Alex, thought that was a little ridiculous. But do you think they're the real deal? Do you think that they could even make a push this year after?
I probably would have had them about in that spot because of how bad they looked in spring training. Look, it's amazing when you think back to how the spring played out for them, where they thought they were able to sign Dexter Fowler and then they didn't, and they signed Yovani Gallardo to add to their rotation, but then Kevin Gausman goes down with a shoulder problem, and they're hopeful that Gausman will come back and he'll be okay, but he's had 3 of these bouts of shoulder tendonitis, and so we'll see if that gets better. They wind up dumping Miguel Gonzalez after he had a terrible spring. It took them almost 2 weeks to win a game in spring training, and lo and behold, out of the gate, they have had tremendous starting pitching. And you're right, they have a tremendous bullpen, and we know that Buck Showalter probably manages a bullpen better than any other manager in baseball other than Bruce Bochy. They have an offense that's going to put up a lot of runs during the course of the year. They catch the ball, but it all comes down, to me, to how many innings of quality they get out of their rotation, because even in this first week, they've constantly had to reach to that bullpen, and that's not something you're going to sustain over the course of the year. They have to find a couple of solutions, whether it's someone emerging in the minor leagues or in a trade or a waiver pickup or something to help stabilize that rotation.
And that seems like a common theme in the AL East. A lot of teams with subpar starting rotations, but unbelievable bullpens. You look at the Yankees with the Aroldis Chapman, who will be coming back in a little over a month, and Andrew Miller. Obviously, the Red Sox, we already talked about them, and the Orioles. But I want to talk about some of the younger talent in the MLB. We're kind of turning a corner in this era of baseball. You got guys like Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts coming out and really taking over the league. What's your opinion on the state of baseball? Do you think it's heading in a good direction? Because you've seen Bryce Harper and Carlos Correa come out and call baseball a game in the past or a tired sport. So what are your impressions of the game right now, and do you think it's in a good spot?
It has a tremendous opportunity. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was so much talk about the game is stayed, and that's at the time when you were getting 3-hour and 10-minute games, and it had slowed down dramatically, especially in the steroid era when it seemed like every game was having the hitters take as many pitches as possible. Well, once they put in drug testing, since then the sport has gotten so much younger, and you're exactly right. The quality of the young players in baseball could not be better than it is. I mean, it is a perfect storm for baseball. Not only having these players be terrific at the outset of their careers, but also the various personalities. Harper, if you like the villain type personality, you could be a fan of a Bryce Harper. If you like the guy who just seems to be having fun all the time, that's Mike Trout. Carlos Correa is as hardworking a player as I've ever been around. I think within 2 years he'll be known as the best player in baseball. He's very much like Derek Jeter in that it seems like he's been built for this. But you also have guys like Andrew McCutchen and Noah Syndergaard is someone who's going to get a lot of attention. All these young pitchers, you cannot have better personalities to market if you're baseball. So they really have a tremendous opportunity, I think, to build on the excellence of these young guys.
And you talk about Carlos Correa. How soon until he because there's been talk about it, how soon until he wins an MVP? Because it seems like he's approaching that territory of a star player. Do you think that's something feasible within the next couple of years?
Yeah, I picked him to win this year, and my thought process was bolstered by time I spent down in Puerto Rico over the winter with Carlos, and down in little town where he grew up, from a very poor family, Santa Isabel, and guys, I've certainly you see a lot of players with great work ethic, but I don't know if I've been around a player whose ambition it was to be a Major League Baseball star from such a young age like him. And think about this. He went to his parents when he was 8 years old, and he grew up in a Spanish-speaking home, and said, I want to go to an English-speaking school because when I become a great player, I need to know English. That's going to be important for me. He was 8 years old when he did that. He was going to baseball academies when he was 12, 13 years old, and his parents, God bless them, they worked like crazy to make that happen for him. And so when you're around him, not only is he an unbelievable star, but he also, like Derek, who I covered as a player for 4 years, he seems to embrace all of it in a way that you rarely see. And like I said, I think he's one of the best players in baseball already. I think he's going to win the American League MVP award, and he's going to be remembered as one of the all-time greats.
Wow. Yeah, he's definitely a star in this league and has an extremely bright future. Him and the rest of that Astros team, all so talented. I saw a lot of people definitely predicting them to be World Series contenders and even possibly even winning it all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great team, and that's I didn't know you thought of him as the next Derek Jeter, an all-time great. Those are strong words, but he's only 21 years old right now?
He's 21 years old, and I'll give you guys an example of Carlos in terms of his work ethic. When I was down in Puerto Rico, he had a deal with the mayor of his hometown, where every night he and his little brother would go and work out in this little ballpark they have that have the lights, and they're, I can't tell you that they're most powerful lights ever, but he would go and work out. And his deal with the mayor was, look, if I go and work out at this park, would you mind if we open up the ballpark so any kids who want to come and watch can do that? And so, like, in the couple of days I was there, every night, 200 to 300 kids from that area would come into the ballpark, and they would just watch him take batting practice and throw. And so every time he hit a ball, they would react to that, and ooh, and half of them are wearing Astros caps and Astros jerseys. And, guys, when he was done, at the end of his workout, all the kids would come down on the field and form a horseshoe in front of the stands, and he would go from group to group to group to pose for pictures, to sign autographs. And a lot of these people were family members or people that he knew since he was a little kid. And it was remarkable to see how well he handled it. Because one of my big questions about young players when they come up is, like a Trevor Story right now, how do they handle that attention? Well, after being around Carlos, I don't know, other than Derek, someone who's better equipped to deal with everything that's going to come with the stardom he's going to have.
It's so great to just see a guy who can handle all of that attention and be such a great character guy in Carlos Correa. And that's a good point, because if Trevor Story wants to be known as one of these guys in his young career, I remember him in the minors, he wasn't that effective. He only averaged about like 14 home runs per game. It wasn't really that much speculation for him to be a star. I know that he was picked high in the draft. I think it was in the 40s in the first round or second round, like the 40th pick or whatnot. But it's great to see a guy like Carlos Correa do that. And we knew that you were high on him, and thank you so much for this. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Buster. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.